That is, I think, the biggest outlier in the history of me. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Listography. The year is 2008. We're doing our top 5 albums of said year. 2008 was an interesting year. I graduated from college, so I was doing my senior thesis 2008. I was not listening to music at all. So this was a fun year for me to go back and kind of check out what I missed and, right the wrongs of my listening experience. In music news, 2008 was actually the peak year for music sales in the United States, which I would not have guessed, 2008. 2008, you saw some bands getting back together. You had the infamous Chinese Democracy finally dropping. New Kids on the Block had an album. Motley Crue got back together for an album. Queen recruited Paul Rodgers for their Queen plus Paul Rodgers album. AC/DC back as well. The number 1 song in the nation, Low by Flo Rida. The star of the Billboard charts that year had to have been T-Pain. I think we all remember that crazy bastard. He had 8 songs on the year-end top 100 chart that he was featured on. I don't know if he was the featured artist on any of them, but he's always that guy in the back, lending those golden pipes, whatever, a lot of auto-tune. Number 1 album in the US was The Carter 3 by Lil Wayne. Number 1 album internationally was Viva La Vida by Coldplay. And the number 2 album, which is a little surprising, Black Ice by AC/DC, number 2 international selling album for all of 2008. Who would have thought? That's it. 2008, I don't think anything else happened in the world. So I think we can jump right on into our top 5.
2008, I think, is a pretty strong year. It's weakened a little bit by losing Bon Iver to 2007. That shakes things up a little bit. So it's kind of missing like that one really, really big, great album for me, but I think there's still a lot of good stuff. Some stuff just missing for me: Lucky by Not a Surf, Now or Heaven by The Broken West, Fleet Foxes, self-titled, Felice Brothers, self-titled, The Virgins, self-titled, Diamond Hoo-Ha by Supergrass, Stay Positive by The Hold Steady, Asking for Flowers by Kathleen Edwards, and the self-titled Vampire Weekend debut. So the ones that are going to be making my list are going to be the self-titled solo debut from Conor Oberst. I think this is a really good, really underrated record. I kind of wrote it off a little bit when it first came out, but man, I really enjoyed it this past week. I thought it was great. There's a pretty big shakeup from where my list was in 08 to now. There's a lot of these 5 were like ranked. I had them like in the 30s, a couple of them in the teens. A lot of the stuff that I had at the top fell significantly. So that's going to sneak in there. I've also got Here's to Being Here by Jason Collette, who I really like. I don't think he has a bad record. I would recommend anyone that doesn't know him to check him out. Really cool, kind of like a slow, drawled out vocal delivery. Good songwriting. He was briefly in Broken Social Scene, so that's where he's coming from. I've also got Fate by Dr. Dog in my top 5. I love Dr. Dog. If you like kind of that throwback to 60s pop, that's kind of what they do. They do it really well. Really catchy. I've also got A Long Dream About Swimming Across the Sea by Tyler Ramsey, which is a really nice, mostly acoustic, very mellow record. He was the guitarist in Band of Horses, but his solo stuff is a lot more mellow than the Band of Horses stuff. A lot of finger-picked guitar, very mellow vocals. He does a good cover of These Days by Jackson Browne on here, but all the originals are really good too. Well, my winner for 2008 is Animal by Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos. I think it's really good. Produced by Brian Deck, who around this time was on a real hot streak. It seemed every record that he worked on was great. So this record, if anyone isn't familiar with them, they kind of have a little bit of like a Arcade Fire feel, at least in the fact that there's a large band. There's 8 people. There's a lot going on. There's trumpets coming in. There's toy piano. There's all these different sounds, but it's not as big and anthemic as Arcade Fire. A little bit more reserved, quieter, maybe a little bit of an Elliott Smith vibe in the songwriting at least, but juxtaposed against these really, really dark lyrics. There's some really dark and twisted stuff on here lyrically, tracks like Real Naked Girls, A Children's Crusade on Acid, Cold Kind and Lemon Eyes. Really interesting songs. I think they're really great. So this was their only record that they ever made on a major label. They were on Epic, I believe. They recorded a bunch of songs. The label wanted one version of the record to come out. They wanted another track listing. So for a while, Animal was only available on vinyl. You can now stream it, but there was a separate version that was released on CD and released digitally called Not Animal. In total, I think there's like 20 tracks between the two albums. They do share a few songs, but I don't think there's a bad song in the whole bunch. For this exercise, choosing one or the other, I'd go with Animal just because I think it's a better, more cohesive listen. But there's some really, really good songs that aren't on Animal, that are on Not Animal, that are also worth checking out. But it's all really good stuff from Margot and the Nuclear So-and-Sos.
Did not see really any of that coming. Most of the stuff I would have guessed, you just put in your honorable mentions. And pretty disappointing list. I'm not crazy about most of the stuff I've heard from what you released. So yeah, I'm not impressed, dude. Dude, what are you thinking? All right, so if the early 2000s was kind of the era and the birth of really memorable and the foundation of indie rock, I feel like by now indie pop is like the new kind of trend, and probably don't get a better example of that sound than you do with the Vampire Weekend debut, which is an album that I just have so much conflict with. It's not in my top 5. I got it at 4 stars, so I give it, I think it's really good, but I know some people hold up Vampire Weekend and especially this album as like a pinnacle of indie pop writing. And it's got moments of brilliance on it, but I think just straight through, I've never got why it's that highly regarded. So other stuff that I was considering: Dear Science by TV on the Radio, Acid Tongue by Jenny Lewis, Santa Gold by Santa Gold, Only by the Night by Kings of Leon. And just missing the top 5 is MGMT's debut, another big like indie pop record. So I thought overall it was a pretty decent year, not probably in the lesser half of the decade. I've only got 2 5-star albums. The rest I've nominated 4.5, which includes Saturdays Equal Youth by M83, Stay Positive by The Hold Steady, classic noise rock album Nouns by No Age. And then this one I listened to a lot this past week. It almost took over my winner, but not quite. That would be You and Me by The Walkmen. But my winner in Jason's honorable mention category is Fleet Foxes by Fleet Foxes. Jason did call this one. I think it's the first one you've accurately predicted for me in a while, my friend. So nice job. Yeah, I think this is a great album for a lot of our listeners that are so nostalgic for the 60s and 70s and classic rock era. I think this is an album that you can try out and really get behind. It's a folk album. It's really rich and angelic, heavenly big folk sound. The sweetest nectar of harmonies, some of the best harmonies this side of the Beach Boys. There's like a mystical element to it, especially with like reeds and percussion, especially the reeds of the flute or whatever it is in the song Your Protector. Something maybe even like biblical about this album that they're tapping into. It's got like just this old beginning of time kind of folklore. And, you know, stylistically it is folk, but it's got such a wide range of just different little nuances in the style, and it's really free and just like got this wind gusting appeal, really enchanting, and like it's like a fairy tale of like the rural areas of like heaven or something. And as good as the music is, the vocals are the star of the show here. One of the best vocals of all time, whether it's the harmonies or just, you know, backed up or not. Phil Eck, the producer on this, classic for that wistful sort of Seattle folk sound. But not really a bad song on it. The opening track is great, and then White Winter Hymnal is probably one you've heard. Just awesome. Cool lyrics. It's a fantastic 5-star album that I think everyone should check out. So Fleet Foxes by Fleet Foxes is my winner, 2008.
So before we let Joe get into his list, you did remind me that I wanted to make mention of Dear Science, because that was the one I talked about having a TV on the radio record that I liked a lot. And when Bon Iver got pulled into 07, I assumed that Dear Science would be my 08 winner. That was my presumptive winner going into this week. And then just listening through stuff, it ended up my number 6. So not quite, didn't make it.
It's like, you don't know TV on the radio or yourself is what that means, basically, because it's not the best TV on the radio album. Come on.
It's always been my favorite TV on the radio record, but I guess I'm changing.
Well, we all make mistakes, Jason. I made a lot in 2008. Going back through listening to my, presumptive winner and all the nominees I thought were going to be on here, I made a ton of moves on this one. One that you just recommended I listened to, Jason, Kathleen Edwards Asking for Flowers, which I don't think I listened to. That's going to be in my, not runners-up, but close to it. I also have Feed the Animals from Girl Talk, The Fame from Lady Gaga, Fleet Foxes, which I thought I didn't like at all, but I went back and listened to it, and I do like it a lot. Not quite on the list. Momofuku by Elvis Costello, I really like a lot. And last year's winner, Fall Out Boy, just misses out this year with Folie à Deux. So what am I going to pick for my runners-up this year? I got Diamond Hoo Ha from Supergrass, which I really like a lot. And that was one, I love early Supergrass, but I kind of had fallen out with them. But I listened to this a bunch of times this week, really dug it. So they're back in the top 5, first time since 97. So nice gap for them. Also making my list, I got The Hold Steady with Stay Positive, a really great album. Another one I kind of just missed the first time through. I don't think I listened to it, but any album where they bust out a harpsichord just rules. That, God, I'm blanking on the song. The one about the girl who's hanging out with the townies and this ridiculous harpsichord backing. It's so good. I love it. Great album. Also on my list, this one, everyone hates this album. I thought it sucked for a long time. It actually rules. Chinese Democracy from Guns N' Roses. I was listening to this all week. I almost made it number 1. It is so much better than I thought. It's really interesting. It's like Axl Rose channeling Trent Reznor and industrial. Like, if this came out in like 98, it would have been a massive hit. So he kind of, took a little too long, but there's some actually really good songs on there. Really like it a lot. So somebody just nominated it for worst album ever in our March Badness, but I must disagree. And then my final runner-up is going to be Kanye West with 808s and Heartbreak. So no, not another win for Kanye. Another album I really hated when it came out. I thought it was the worst thing ever. All the auto-tune vocals, and he went from giant stadium hip-hop to this real stripped-back auto-tuned affair. Kind of like how Prince did Around the World in a Day after Purple Rain. But it's actually really good, really cool lyrics, really introspective. But the winner, I don't think anyone ever in the history of this channel would see this coming. I didn't see it coming. I'm going with Evil Urges from My Morning Jacket. It is so unbelievably good. I can't believe I missed the boat on this album. I love Z, but the biggest problem I had with Z was the production. It sounds like it's underwater. All the raw power is stripped away. They don't make the mistake on this album. It sounds much crisper, clearer. Doesn't have that kind of indie whatever that I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite kind of sound. This one has so much kind of like classic R&B, some classic country, like Glenn Campbell-esque ballads on here. I think Jim James has never sounded better than on this album. Kind of channels like Smokey Robinson on Evil Urges a little bit. He's way up in the stratosphere. Got a real kind of R&B inflection in his vocals, which I really love. And it's just, it's so diverse. You have Aluminum Park, which kind of sounds like The Who. The songwriting, maybe a little cheesy, but it kind of gives me like a Brian Wilson, Paul McCartney vibe on something like Librarian, which is, totally cheesy, but it's kind of endearing too, I think. The rhythm section's awesome as always. Tom Blankenship, completely underrated bass player. So good, really super groovy, a little R&B on this. Still know how to rock, but sometimes it's about what he doesn't play. He leaves so much room. Love all his bass lines. He has some amazing ones on this and Z and throughout his career, but I just love it. I love the instrumentation. I love kind of the throwback late 60s, 70s, early 70s vibe on this, the production, the singing, everything. Wasn't even on my radar for a possibility when we kind of started listening, and it just rocketed straight to the top of the charts. So, we all make mistakes. This was my greatest mistake, not having Evil Urges in my top for 2008. Totally dismissed it, but I now see the light. It's a great album. I love it. And it's my winner for 2008.
Wow. It actually makes total sense that would be your favorite My Morning Jacket album. Like, now that I think about it, yeah, that would be the one, because it's got like that warm 70s-ness to it.
And I missed out. That was the first video that you two did, I believe, when Kramzer kind of joined in for a guest spot. So I missed out on listening to all the My Morning Jacket. And I don't know if I like it more than The Waterfall or Z, but there's something about it right now that I love. So if we did the list like today, I would probably put it at number one. Maybe in a month or two, if I listen to everything straight through, it might not be number one, but I definitely gained a lot of respect and love for it during our 2008 listening experience. So there you go. This channel works miracles.
And you saying that you now really like Fleet Foxes, that's something.
Yeah, that was another one. I don't know why I didn't like them when they came out. There's like one song that I didn't like that much, and I kind of dismissed the whole album. But in 2019, I really liked the Fleet Foxes album that came out, 4 stars for that one. So I figured maybe my mind has changed. I'll go back. I'll check out the beginning. And I dug it. Not quite for the top 5, but it's a really good album. And now I'm going to have to listen to their next album in 2010, I think. So who knows, maybe it'll break into the top 5 then.
I gave Evil Urges 2 stars, by the way. It's such a disappointment for me.
Here's the difference, I think. I like Z, but I had no love for My Morning Jacket going into Z. I liked One Big Holiday. Not a huge fan of their early stuff. From what I've heard, a little too jammy and kind of, it didn't do it for me. So I wasn't like a huge fan. I had nothing into them. They weren't like my savior of rock and roll or anything. So I have no kind of issues with the weirdness and the all over the placeness and the divergence from their sort of beginning sound of Evil Urges. So
how familiar are you then with Circuital at this point?
I've listened to it a couple times, but I may have been sort of confusing it a little bit with Evil Urges, because now I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it for 2011, I think, and see how much I like that one. I'm just all over the place, because Waterfall 2 didn't care for that much. Loved the Waterfall. Really like Z. It Still Moves. In Tennessee Fire, I listened to. Not my favorite. I actually went back and watched your My Morning Jacket video just to see where you guys had Evil Urges for this video. And I knew this would upset Kramzer, so I was really looking forward to it.
Well, we should just remaster the damn My Morning Jacket list then. We never did a top 10 songs or side 3 for it anyway.
That's true. Maybe we'll do that. We could do Genesis too while we're at it. Again, I'm gonna really upset people with that one, so it'd be a good one to do as well. Any other thoughts for 2008 before we close out? One more year in the decade. Kind of a anonymous. It's gonna be a weird decade to pick our favorite live and favorite bands and players and everything. But we'll get to that in 2 weeks or so. So let's see your 2008 lists. I'm interested to know how many people will have Chinese Democracy in their top 5. Probably not many. I might be the only person in America with that opinion. But leave them anyway. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Check in the description for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. And we will see you in 2009 for our next top 5. Thanks for watching.